Many leaders won't ask for help. They think it's weakness. They think if I bring someone in from the outside to help my company, I'm showing weakness to my team because all eyes are on me and I should have all the answers. Well, I completely disagree. But if you are bringing someone in from the outside, there's a few things that you need to think about. And I'm talking with David Kain today. He is a corporate trainer, traveling mentor to many of his clients, helping them achieve massive results. And he's going to talk about what he looks for in a client, what a client should look for if they're hiring him, and then more importantly, how you should interview that consultant to make sure they're the right fit for your company. So let's dive into today's episode, my interview with David Kain. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of You're in Charge, Now What? I'm your host, Glenn Pasch, and the goal of this channel is to help those of you who now find yourself in charge of a team, a division, or a business, build the skills necessary to lead high-performing teams. Each week, we're going to focus on one topic. Myself, or like today, my guest, we're going to share some strategies that have helped us build our businesses so you can generate consistent results and ultimately increase your bottom line. So if you're new to the channel or you've been watching and you haven't subscribed yet, just click the button down below, ring the little bell. Every week you'll be notified of the new videos we push out. I post at least 2 videos a week. Also throw your comments in. I'd love to hear what you like, what you dislike, or if there's a new topic you'd like to talk about. And as always, I ask you to share because the goal of this channel, I was talking to David, my guest earlier, there's a lot of people who get put in positions of being in charge and then they're left on their own. So the goal of this is to give them some tactical advice to help them out. So I'm really excited to, I don't get an opportunity to sit down with David, who's my guest, and I'll let him introduce himself in a moment, for these types of chats. It's always, we're very busy and it's in passing or it's on social media or it's at a conference. Hi, David. Hi, David. Hi, Glenn. Hey, and we pass. So this is why I wanted to really bring David on. I have such a tremendous amount of respect for his, just what he's done and how he's grown his business, but also how he is seen as a leader and how he treats clients. I've heard nothing but phenomenal things. So I thought we'd pick his brain on a couple topics. So welcome, David. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Glenn. I appreciate it. And I love the opportunity to brainstorm with anybody, particularly someone who does the same thing that I do and maybe do a little bit different. So I'm kind of like a snowball. I like to roll down and pick up ideas as I go.
That's great. That's great. So before we jump in, just grab a few seconds, 30 seconds, tell everybody who you are, what you do, and then we'll get rolling.
Sure. So lifelong automotive person. My family's been in the car business since the day I was born. My dad still a dealer, and I'm a dealer partner with my brothers and my sister in our family store in Lexington, Kentucky. But 20 years ago, I left and started a company called Ford Direct. And after 3.5 years, as the chief operating officer of that company, I branched out and started Kain Automotive. And we just celebrated our 17th year of teaching dealers how to do digital marketing and sales training and everything that has to do with BDC. So, it's just crazy how time flies, but wow, it's nearly 40 years in the car business, and I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, time flies. And so again, the other thing that so those of you who are watching, David and I know each other from the automotive industry, but what we talked about and joked about earlier was we're not talking about automotive. We may touch on something, but this is what we're talking about applies to anything that if you're running a team or doesn't matter what business. And there's a few different things that I think David could really bring to light. And so the first thing I want to start out as, you being this consultant that someone's reaching out to and basically saying, David, I need help. Something is not going on right, or I'm not achieving the results. My question to start off this discussion is, I've seen leaders or people in charge who think bringing someone in from the outside or asking for help is seen as weakness, part because if I'm the leader, everyone's eyeballs are all on me. I'm supposed to have all the answers, and they're not willing. And so for putting yourself in their shoes for a moment, as a leader, how should one view bringing in help? And number two, how do you make that decision to go out and then start that process to go find someone?
Yeah, so I think most people who are in any kind of leadership position are avid readers.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not reading per se, they're probably listening or watching videos like this. So their absorption rate for information and improvement concepts is always leaning forward, so to speak. And
Right.
so what we find, and I'm sure you run into the exact same situation, is if there's any resistance, it's typically more organic in that they're not necessarily a good learner. And you and I have experienced the adage that is so true: when the student is ready, the teacher arrives. And so one of the things that I would encourage anybody is to recognize their own learning skills. And are you as an organization a learning organization, or do you feel like you're there?
Right.
And I look at great leaders that I've been exposed to, and dealers, dealer principals per se, and they just leadership will then break their organizational cluster, and they'll do book reviews and things together, learn things together.
Right.
And I think if dealership or does an determines, is it healthy for us to continually learn, then you create a culture of learning, and it becomes really normalized, if you will, for your team members to be open to coaching. And so if you think of coaching or training as kind of a human book,
Mm-hmm.
or a living podcast, if you will, then now you've got somebody, and if your personalities click, it's just way better than just this static book
Right.
that you make notes of. And now you've got the person that you can actually be a thought partner with. So those are some of the things that come to mind for me when I'm approached by an organization. They say, well, I don't know if the person is open to training
Right.
or consulting. I like to do a little back and forth and understand their learning culture.
So I like that, and I took notes there for a moment because I wrote down the learning organization, and that's an interesting thing because I think I mean I agree with you that the most successful organizations have a culture of we're learning, we're going to move forward, we're investing in our people through development. That's my thing. It's always, you hear training, but it's really training and development is long-term more than initial just, hey, here's new hire training or what training you would get initially. So how does one, is it again purposeful? Does it have to be driven only by the leader in terms of creating this learning organization, or can it be from the bottom up? How have you seen organizations transition maybe from something that wasn't a learning organization to something that embraces this learning culture?
Yeah, I think one thing that you and I both have benefited from is we've been around great leaders most
Mm-hmm.
of our lives, are either our parents or our peers, and they've helped shape us into that. And one of the interesting things that I've learned about these new generations is they're pretty darn forthright.
Right.
So when I was growing up, it wasn't even as dramatic as what's in it for me, the WIFM. it was basically you do what you're told and you like it. And I did what I was told when I first started out. And sometimes people would say, well, you're not a real agreeable employer. You've got too many opinions. And I was kind of on the cusp of what I admire today. People would say, you know, how come you're doing that? So there's this fella who runs a good organization that you and I would both know in automotive. And when I started as the chief operating officer for Direct, we didn't have a CEO. So I was the interim CEO, and we were going through things that were just startup operational things. And this young upstart who is now a veteran in the industry in digital, he was one of my young employees. And he was so outrageous in just saying, here's what I think we ought to do, and here's my view. And I'm like, dude, I'm 40 years old. I know where I'm going with this, and you just listen to me. So that was my upbringing, but it certainly wasn't his. He's 22 years old. He just was brash and very intelligent. And I remember one day I was talking to him and I said, well, this is my gut feeling born from 20 years of automotive experience. And he goes, well, I appreciate that gut, but imagine if we take your gut and this data, how wonderful it would be. And I was like, dude, oh my God, he had me. And so what I would say to those who are working from the bottom up is speak up, be brave, challenge your management, and don't necessarily let them off the hook by telling you to go back and do what
we've always done, right?
Yeah, or what they're comfortable with. And we all know the definition of insanity. And one of the things that you and I have been are change agents in the industry. And I believe individuals that are youth in the organization, and I don't mean by age, but maybe by time in the organization. They can be older, but just don't have the experience base or the time put in there. But imagine if they come in, they go, well, you know, here's my opinion. Right. And I think during the interview process, if I were young and I was thinking, is this an organization I want to work with? Not always just trying to get a job, I would be trying to get the right job. And I would test, I would do a little stress test during the interview and say, you know, I've been looking at your organization and I was thinking about this. Have y'all ever considered that? And that's a really good micro test of whether or not this would be a good fit for you as a thoughtful person, whether the reception would be there.
See, I really like that because for all the years I've done interviews for the businesses I've been involved in, I'm always struck at how few questions I'm asked. Not where the typical canned answers, well, where do you think your company is going to be in 5 years? But those that say, well, I see that for our agency, I see you work with this type of client predominantly. Do you work over here? Or saw this, or I read your most recent article. That means they're paying attention and they're involved, and those usually spark the best conversations. But going off of what you just said in terms of either youth or now, so again, now let's focus on when you're going in and you're helping people who are leading the teams. That's what they're bringing in. You're doing the training so that when you leave, they can get better at what they do. This dynamic of different ages, different experience, different learning, right? Some people are more visual learners. Some people are more here, just write it down. How do you advise someone who's in charge of a team? How do you advise them to notice or prepare to adapt their teaching style to the recipient versus to what you had said when we were growing up, because we're, certain age of, it's all done one way and you had to figure it out your own. How do you work with people that way?
Yeah, so there's a couple of techniques that I've picked up over the years, and one I'll give credit to a fellow named Harry Cohen. And Harry was an executive coach within the Ford Motor Company. And
Mhm.
before that, when I was at the dealership, Harry had a program that he ran for Ford Motor Company where dealers would come in and they would go through the breakdown. And part of that was this concept of camping and getting outside of the framework of always being on a project or just doing your workload, but communicating and have a facilitated camp out, if you will, to where you would do games, you would do discussions, you would talk about different topics, and you'd start to recognize the human skills. And
Right.
one of the things that I always tried to do when I was at the dealership was learn what else they do. And so we may be in a position where we say, oh, Joe is a technician or Mary is a lot attendant. And that's what I know them for. I don't want to get to know them anymore because as a leader, I was told separate personal from work and just to be safe. Well, the truth is, typically work is where we spend so much of our time. We should get to know and like the people.
Mhm.
But then what's also cool is Mary, we find out, runs the accounting for a club that she's a member of. And Joe happens to write computer code or is a graphic designer
Right.
or someone is a builder. And so when we come outside the facilitator roles in a work setting and we recognize that these are complex human beings and they're not just segmented by and identified by their skill set at work, but what else do they know? And what was really cool is I had this experience with Todd McFarland, and he was one of my early BDC manager growth. We started from scratch at
Right.
the Kain Automotive Group in Eugene, Oregon. And Todd, when he would interview people for a job, he would say, okay, so you're skilled and you're capable of doing this job, but what else do you do?
Right.
And even before Google and all that other stuff started hitting and people would be given free time to work on their project, Todd would give his employees a couple hours a week to work on something that was in their side by side or their parallel skill set, or maybe not parallel skill set. They were good at Excel, or they were good at graphics, or they were good at technology. And he would let them work 38 hours a week on their job, but then he'd give them 2 hours to romp and run in this far-fetched whatever they wanted to work on. And he became the beneficiary of that. And then he used it as a launching pad to create this organic team of people that could write code, do graphics, do spreadsheets, do all the things that we hire out. And he created an internal device. And not surprisingly, very happy team, very productive team. Heretofore, still the greatest close rate of any large organization I've ever worked with. And I think it was born from the culture that he created.
Yeah, and I think I totally agree with that because I've always tried to get to know some of the individuals, what makes them tick a little bit, part because if I'm trying to coach them on a specific action or task that they need to do, I need to find maybe an outside link. So if they're a musician, I can say, well, I can maybe find something in music that connects where they go, oh, I see what it is. Maybe it's sports for someone else. Maybe it's art for someone else. But to your point, I think really great leaders look for two things. One is that they would love to promote their people, give them more opportunities, expand what it is. And I've seen it too, where in our company, other companies that I've consulted for, where all of a sudden they're going, we need somebody to do video and we have to hire somebody. I said, how many employees do you have? And they said, well, we have about 50. I said, I will bet you anything in this day and age, someone in this building makes videos for social media, fun videos, and they look at it as fun. And he said, well, let me ask. And sure enough, there was some new employee who was parking the cars and doing lot thing, started doing all their videos. And he looked at it as a bonus to do this
Yeah.
and said, oh, I have no problem. I'll do it, almost to the point of saying, you don't even have to give me time. If you'll just let me do it, that's fine. But I think, to your point, the more that you can know, you don't have to. And I understand that analogy, or that line that people say. Doesn't mean that you have to have dinner. Doesn't mean you have to have them over your house.
Yeah.
But if you care about them, what happens is I feel that also what motivates people changes if you have someone with you for length of time, where maybe it was money in the beginning, or maybe it was a title, but then maybe they move towards, hey, I need time with my family, or I need to work from home a couple extra days a month. And so knowing what keeps them engaged and feeling that what you were saying with the example with Todd is that they care about me, and then they care about the company. And that's what I think a lot of leaders don't do, because it's all just driven. I need to get as much out of you in terms of results. And so I just keep driving that. And that's why I think we have, in certain industries, there's a lot of turnover, because it's just a one trick pony of, I need this, I need this, I need this. And anything outside of that, I don't know how to handle that. So I just keep, pushing them back into this one lane and driving it really, really hard.
Yeah. And it's interesting. We've probably both read books about Jack Welch, and he passed away in the last 12 months, and known as Neutron Jack. And if you're not an AEB type performer, you got to be blown out and all this. And as much as when I was younger, I read those books and I was like, that's what I want to be like. And I'm thinking at 59 years old, I don't want to be anything like that. I just think that courses through my veins, and it makes me sit here at every moment and judge somebody based on their productivity or where I've categorized them. And I believe we can get some false indicators of what that person is all about. And when I go off to the sunset one of these days, I really don't want to be sitting there known as that jerk who had this scale, and we rated people, and every 3 months we went through and we kicked people out and we brought new people in. That kind of threatening environment, first off, I thought it was insane then, but I did it because I felt like it was important. But going back to when I was talking about the WIFM, the WIIFM, what's in it for me, and how I admire that, what I initially was challenged by, and now I'm pretty comfortable with, and I like as an exercise, Glenn, to put on the board, that I was raised in a just do it.
Yes.
Well, before Nike came out with it, we were told just do it, or better, our parents said, because I said so, right?
Yes. Kids are seen and not heard, and just do what I tell you to do because I said it, and it was yes, ma'am, yes, sir. Yeah, no, I grew up same way.
And then with them was this dramatic, and now the new, let's see, I want what I want, where and when I want it. And I think that's the consumer behavior, but it's also this new generational perspective of, I want this when I want it, when and where I want it. And so to some degree I rebel against that, and I'm like, dude, in time you'll get there, but let's earn the right. Let's put little miles on your odometer and make sure that you're moving in the right direction. But at the same point, I do want them to want that. And then I want to give them a path to achievement. So I'm totally cool with saying, we got 5 people. You can all advance at whatever pace you want to. Here's the path. And so long as there's no air in your layers and you're able to do it without any compromise to quality or genuineness or authentication or whatever, go there. Grow as high as you want to grow, and use this company as a launch pad. And I think that's another thing that kind of works in harmony with all this, Glenn, is as a leader, you got to champion people's elevation.
Right.
And we tend to, in the auto industry, part of the reason why sometimes it's difficult to recruit is there's no perceived elevation.
Right.
I can be a salesperson. I can be a sales manager, F&I manager. Oh, but you're the owner and the GM, so you're young. So I probably only have three levels, and
Right.
that becomes a problem. And I think if you are a leader, you've got to create elevation.
I think, and to your point is with the new generation is they want to know a path. They may not want to it today, some might, but it's more, I just want to know where we're going. I want to know how you're going to help me get there. Um, and I think it's really important, as you said, for leaders of a team, I always say is my job as a leader is to replace myself. My
Yeah,
job is to build people up to do what I do so I can do something else. Um, or if I'm there, then I want to be a training ground. I mean,
yeah,
I've had employees when we were really small in the beginning, some really gifted people who could have done my job, but there was nothing else for me to do at that time. I wasn't traveling. I wasn't. So they came to me and said, "What do you think?" And I said, I'd love you to stay here, but if that's your goal, it's not going to happen here
yeah,
today. So they said, well, I said, listen, I'll write you the best recommendation you ever had, and I'll help you look if that's what you want. And I think you have to do that as a leader, be willing to let someone go. And I still have a lot of great contacts with people who used to work for me
mhm,
who have gone on to do tremendous things. And that makes me proud as a leader to say, look what I helped instill versus no, it is that sense of hoarding, I'm hoarding talent and you can't leave me, or if they leave, it's a betrayal. In this day and age, people are moving, people are flexible, people have opportunities. There's so many different things going on. And as a leader, I think you have to have that mindset to focus on the task at hand, nurture your team to get the results, keep investing time in the team to move it forward, but don't be surprised. I always say if I can get 2 years out of people who are new or entry level, I'm great. Even though half of my team has been with me 7+ years, I think, that to me is a great thing for me to talk about, but it is that sense of how do we nurture, how do we promote, how do we take care of people? And I think circling back initially to what we started the conversation, I think a lot of times you have to be self-aware to call somebody up to say, I need help doing this, or I need somebody to come in and look at what I'm doing as a leader. Because if I want that, am I really doing it? And
yeah,
sometimes we can work in the business so much, it's hard for us to be objective with what's going on. So we need to have someone come in and say, yeah, you're halfway there, or no, you're over here and you want to be over here. Let's work together to do that. I think that's a really big, that key for leaders, self-awareness and admitting that. I think it's really key.
yeah. And when you are considering bringing in someone to assist or to coach or to train or mentor, it's important to have that one-to-one dialogue. And,
Hmm.
and one of the things that I've learned in my position is don't blindside the poor employee that you're going to have me coach. Make sure that I have some one-on-one time prior to that opportunity so
Right.
that I can calm them down and make them understand what my role is, and that I'm not coming in there to change their life or their livelihood. In fact, let's kick around some ideas of what you've done that you're proud of, and let's work to fulfill that growth plan that you've got. Because some of the best operational engagements I've ever had have been with people who finally relaxed about
Right.
someone coming to help them, and they realize, oh my God, this is that person that probably can help me get my idea done and make a difference. And on the other hand, you've run into this, I'm sure, any number of times where people say, I want to do what you do because I can't talk my dealer into doing what I want to do. And I always like to counsel them and say, well, let's evaluate that. So we're going to ask you to go change the behavior of complete strangers.
Right.
And you can't do it with someone that you know and have worked with
Right.
for
Right.
years who trust you. I think you're going to really suffer if you try to do what I do, because if you can't convince people who you know and trust, it's going to be way harder when you get out in the wild to try to do
In the
that.
wild. Yeah. No, listen, I think that that combination of self-awareness, um, at every level of leadership, to make that decision to say we need help, to bring someone in. And I like that concept of one-on-one time. I will always recommend when someone says, well, how do I find someone to do this? I say, well, I'm sure you can find names from people, but it's important for you to interview that consultant, that trainer, as if you were hiring somebody for your company, because theoretically you are. They're
Yeah.
coming in, so you have to make sure they're a cultural fit, the way they train, the way they teach. And then also knowing, to your point, if I'm bringing that person in for someone other than yourself,
Mm-hmm.
understanding what type of person that person connects with, because it could work for me, but it may not work for them. And I think, to your point, is that interview process is key, because you're bringing someone into your company, ideally to help. But if you don't pay attention, you could end up doing more damage than you thought by bringing someone in.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting enough, whoever you bring in, we're a small organization, so we're kind of a one man band, if you will, when we go
Mhm.
in and we do facilitation on all levels. And so, what I always like to make sure that Chelsea and Steve in particular know is don't demote yourself. So, you're going to have a one-to-one relationship with the dealer principal or the general manager of the store. And so you don't want to feel as though, well, I'm bothering that person, so I only work with the BDC
Right.
person. I'll send them a summary and so on and so forth. And it's easy for you and I to walk in, and that's comforting. We could sit with the business owner and have a one-to-one relationship. But can we as easily float down to the department manager and make them feel as though we're really paying attention, or do they always have to be on guard that we're just reporting back to the boss about
Right.
it? And I want the frontline employee to feel as though I'm their guy. So I think if I'm a dealer or a business owner and I'm considering someone coming in who's going to coach, teach my team, I want to be able to feel comfortable as the business owner that they can talk at my level, but similarly that they can do the same on the stratuses as you
Exactly.
go down, so that everybody feels great about it. And when we huddle after the visit, we can all sit there and go, well, Glenn talked to me about this. And oh, really? Glenn talked to me about this. And they can be totally disparate topics, but you made each of them feel good about what you brought to the table.
That's great. So as we sort of wind up here, because I think we've talked a good amount. I just want to summarize again for what David and I have been talking about is, it's not weakness to ask for help. So if you are a business owner or you are a team leader and you need help in a certain skill set, or if someone's bringing someone in from the outside, raise your hand and ask for help. It's not weakness. I know sometimes it's hard to do that. And then for those of you who are in charge and you are considering bringing someone in from the outside, do your due diligence, find out, people that they've worked with, but more importantly, as David pointed out, interview that person. They're coming in to deal with your team. If
Yes.
they're dealing with you, okay, that's as far as it goes. But if they're going to work with your team, you have to make sure they're comfortable with you. But more importantly, they're comfortable all the way down, because they're impacting your people, and you can do more damage bringing in someone who is going to be disruptive to your business. You would have been better off not bringing them in. So it is really important to do that. So David, before we go, I always ask one final question. And then any other thoughts you have on this? I always say, so here's a brand new manager and they're meeting you and they're saying, okay, David, I just took over this team and I need you to give me one piece of advice that's good, that I now have to do first, or, one of my priorities. Could be something you've learned, someone gave you a tip. But if someone said to you, what is the best thing that I should focus on first of taking over this team? What's the thing I should be focusing on first? What would you say it would be?
I would think the first thing you need to do is open your eyes and ears and just watch.
Mm.
I read this book when I first started my company called Small Giants, and we've mimicked a lot of what we've done by trying to be small and have a giant impact on our clients. And one of the people in the book that they highlighted said, the reason why I think we've got such loyalty in our organization is I go around to the different workplaces or the work settings with my employees, and I'll sit there and I'll say, Glenn, tell me what you're doing. And I watch them and I listen. And when this employee gets to share with me what they do,
right,
wow, it really has an impact on them, and it certainly has an impact on me. So if I'm a new manager, don't go in and say, oh, by the way, everybody read this book, I'm famous, and you gotta do what I've done here, and there won't be any time y'all be just like me. And then they go off to lunch together and they're like, what a jackass that guy is. And,
exactly.
But if you'll set your ego aside as a new leader and watch and listen and just ask, show me what you do, it's amazing how you start building a trusted relationship right from the get-go that forges an opportunity for you to then lead everyone forward.
That's great. I was interviewing someone the other day, and they had a similar but a different way to describe. He said, when you start, your job is to put deposits into them. Before you take anything out, put deposits in. And using this, I love this as an example because that's a tactical thing someone can do, is go and just ask, what do you do? Show me what you do. Talk to people. People feel you're breaking down that barrier, because when you're coming in, the first thing they are doing is going, all right, who's this going to be? Because they probably had a few people through and they're going, okay, here we go on the roller coaster ride of management, versus you coming over and just reaching your hand out and saying, hi, who are you? Tell me what you do. Immediate. Great tip. Really, really appreciate it. So David, thank you so much. We could sit here and talk for hours, but before we go, just let everyone know where they can, reach out to you, where you are on social media, how to connect. How can they find you?
Yeah, so easy enough, just David at kainautomotive.com. And the only hitch there is Kain is spelled Kain. So David at Kain Automotive, on Twitter at Kain Automotive, on LinkedIn, and you can hook up with me on Facebook as well. I never hesitate to give out my cell phone number, so you can always text me at 859-533-2626. And Glenn, thank you very much. I've enjoyed this, and hopefully we'll get to have more conversations like this in the future.
I appreciate it. So guys, that's another interview in the books here. So as always, as I say at the end, again, please subscribe, please click the button. Love to hear your comments, and please share, because what David shared today with everyone, I think, is really great information. It's going to help you, and it's probably going to help someone else you know. So as we end every episode, we always say, you're in charge. But now David has given you a few more tools to help you become more successful. So we'll see you next time. And again, David, thanks so much. I'll see you soon.
Thank you.